So Tony asked me to talk a little bit about some of the technologies that we're working with at the moment and try to make some specific suggestions about where we might focus on technology over the coming year to make something of a difference here. He went to Anguilla in the British Virgin Islands for this sort of thing, and I went to Basingstoke. So I'm feeling like I'm not really in the right company for this sort of thing. But although I have been to Anguilla, I have to say, Anguilla is actually my favourite country in the entire world. For the reason, I don't know if is it anybody else's favourite country? I mean, most people's favourite. It's not. Anguilla is the only country in the world that had a revolution in order to get into the British Empire, and I think it's true. It's a very special place to me. So, I want to begin just by saying, look, we have a very specific. There are real problems that we're trying to solve with the technology. It's not in abstract, and those problems look quite disparate, but actually they're all related to the same underlying factors. So I've got, just to make the point, I've got on one side, for example, we've got this thing about people being ripped off on internet dating, and over here we've got things about compliance and so on. And these are all symptoms of the same underlying mismatch of infrastructure between the electronic age that we're trying to operate in and the places where we've come from. And trying to take the infrastructure that we had and make it work in this new way doesn't really work. So I can illustrate. So for example, on the Today programme, it's what we listen to when you're listening to Radio 1 in the mornings, Joe. A few weeks, it's going to be mandatory in the UK in a couple of months' time to have mandatory age verification for adult services. And some minister or other for digital things, I can't remember who it was on the table, and he said, well, of course, when people log in they can hold up their passport to the webcam in order to show. I'm not making this up. I wish I was. That was actually a minister who really said. It's this mismatch between what we understand, the infrastructure that we're used to, and the electronic. So my point is, if we get it right by selecting the technologies and nudging them in the right direction and working with them properly, we can solve quite a wide range of problems through evolving the same underlying infrastructure. So I mean, I'm going to be talking specifically about finance, but I don't want you to think that I don't understand there are problems in other areas that we can touch on with the same technologies. I thought, given the sort of nature of the event, the thing would be to pick three technologies, and the three technologies I picked, as you can see, are biometrics, blockchains, and bots. And I picked those three because the point was made about EVID and these identity issues, and this is, we have to do something about this problem. The problem of identity in the digital age is not only is it bad, it's getting worse. I mean, we've basically you remember in the old days, lazy management consultants always used to put up that slide of that dog from on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. So basically in 20 years, the progress we've made on this is now on the internet, no one knows you're a fridge pretending to be a dog. I mean, that's basically how far we've got. We haven't done anything about fixing this problem. It can't continue. And the assumption was in a lot of the discussions last year, and certainly in the proposition development groups that I was involved in, we're looking towards the banks with the right regulatory framework to be the people to solve this problem. Because obviously we were saying to ourselves, well, it's the banks who really do the KYC. It's the banks who know who you are. This puts Jersey in a great position and so on. And then, last week in the newspaper, I read that Facebook have just bought a company that does, verifying who you are by holding up your passport and all this sort of thing. So if we don't fix that problem, it might get fixed in ways that are suboptimal for us. And so I'd like to sort of say we should accelerate in these directions. So let's start with talking about biometrics. I think this has changed in recent times. A couple of years ago when we were talking about biometrics had the wrong context. It had the context of, what was that film with Tom Cruise I've gone blank on it, one of those awful films about, Minority Report, with, with this spying on your irises and all this sort of thing. Really go around. And that was people's context for biometrics. So there's a scary surveillance kind of thing. But of course, in the meantime, Apple came along and made them nice and friendly and put them in the phones. And so now people's context for biometrics is as a convenience technology rather than as a security technology. And that gives us the opportunity to use that convenience across quite a wide spectrum with the goal of making all transactions equally secure. So in other words, when I want to engage in any kind of transaction in Jersey, I should have the same levels of security, whether it's in person or whether it's remote. And in fact, I could argue, I think quite reasonably, that actually we can make the online transactions more secure than the in-person transactions. And I can give you the obvious example of that. I walk into a bank to open a bank account and I show them my Portuguese passport, right? And so they photocopy it and put it in a drawer or whatever the rules are about this, and I can't remember exactly. What, you think I'm showing it to some anti-terrorist genius at the front desk of the bank who can spot a forged Portuguese passport with the drop of a hat for anyone? Of course not. In actual fact, if we move those transactions online, we make them more secure, because checking those electronic digital credentials is actually more effective, more accurate. Does anybody have a favourite Bitcoin scandal at the moment? I know you don't have a favourite island. Let's go down another path. What's your favourite Bitcoin? I know there's a new one every week. What's your favourite Bitcoin? So last week, big exchange shutdown, a big ICO initial launch, and guess what? The people have disappeared and the money's gone missing. I mean, who'd have thought that this would ever happen? This wasn't in Jersey, of course. So, and then I read a thing, and they said, well, we checked the passport of the guy, but after he disappeared with all the money, it turned out the passport was fake. The idea that making people show up and doing things in the real world and in a branch, and I don't want to get all sort of E-Estonian with Tony on this kind of thing, but we have an opportunity to make, the more efficient online transactions more secure than their conventional paper alternatives. And because biometrics have this new context as a convenience technology, they're our friend in this respect. And I'm picking up the example. Face, a couple of years ago, that would have been scary. I worked on a couple of projects, one of them with an American bank. And I can tell you right now, face recognition was absolutely revolutionary across the board, especially with the older generation. Because they liked being able to pick up, they wanted to see their balance. They wanted to be able to pick up the phone. They didn't want to have to put their glasses on and punch in some passcode or whatever. Just picking up the phone and looking at it. And now Apple come along with Face, and now everyone says it's all okay. Biometrics are our friend, but the context is convenience, right? The security comes from what we build around them. So I think it's a reasonable target across the coming year to look to make transactions more secure, and the way of making them more secure is actually to move them online and stop relying on stupid bits of paper and things that we can't really verify anyway. And if we don't do it, Facebook will. So, the second thing is blockchains. I know some of you in here were involved in the proposition development groups looking at blockchain over the year. I want to. I know you're all sick of hearing about blockchain, and I am too. And it's like every day. Yesterday was one of the worst days, by the way, because of World Economic Forum in Davos. So in Davos yesterday there was a constant stream of the blockchain is going to. Well, actually, there wasn't anything it wasn't going to do, as far as I could tell. It's going to help refugees, and it's going to end world poverty, and it's going to, get cats out of trees and things you can't even imagine. The blockchain's going to do all of these sort of things. It's become a sort of magical. I mean, because the people that are saying these things don't understand anything about what a blockchain is or what it does or how it works. It's just become this sort of magical totemic instrument of utopianism. It's the sort of thing, like a couple of hundred years ago, we'd have been saying, well, we're going to do this in America, because like it's far away and everything's going to be better and different there, And it was, but nobody had been there. And now we're going to do it on the blockchain, and that's going to solve the problem. So, okay, I accept, you're sick of it, and 99% of everything you read about the blockchain is total bollocks. Was it? Timothy, come on, you're all grown-ups, Timothy Leary, he said 95% of everything is shit. Well, he'd never read any of these blockchain things, because if he had, he would have known it's 99.95%. But it does have a very interesting, the class of technology has a very interesting and particular characteristic, which I think we discussed during those groups, and I think we need to reflect on and accelerate, and that's the issue of transparency. So one thing this technology does that previous technologies haven't done is it provides a transparency in the transactional space. And the favourite diagram, I love using this diagram to illustrate it. I know you guys have seen it before. This is from Popular Mechanics magazine in 1936. It's one of my all-time favourite pictures. So this is the era when the problem facing the financial services industry was armed robbery. This is the days of Bonnie and Clyde, the Great Depression, the era of John Dillinger and all that sort of thing. The days that we fondly remember when the people who robbed banks didn't work for them. It was a very different sort of environment. I'm allowed that one joke, come on. Yeah. Okay. And so people were trying to decide banks that it was going to be harder to steal. And so they were imagining, well, we're going to build the bank out of concrete, we're going to build it underground, we're going to have machine gun nests around it. And a guy called Francis Keeley, who's a very famous architect. He's the first person to ever design an airport, interestingly, which I think as architects go. That's quite a feather in someone's cap if you're an architect, the first person to design an airport. And he said, no, if you want to stop people robbing banks, you should build them out of glass. Don't build them out of concrete and steel and whatever. Build them out of glass. You can't rob a glass bank, because if you walk into the glass bank with a gun and try and hold up the cashiers, everybody walking past can see what's going on and they can call the cops. So he said the solution to this is transparency. And I thought about this, Marc Benioff's comment at Davos a couple of years ago, which I think is a really, he illustrates the fact we're looking at problems that go beyond the finance sector, much wider problems, but there are specific problems in the finance sector about regaining trust and confidence. And he said we need radical transparency to achieve that. So I think, yes, we're all sick of reading rubbish about the blockchain, but if we focus around on the key characteristic that could be different for us in markets, it's looking at ways of using that transparency, which is in the context of a regtech rather than as a fintech, which would allow us to construct markets that work better, not just a little bit more efficiently, markets that are vastly cheaper to manage and organise and operate, markets that people want to participate in because of the transparency, the openness, the honesty that comes with them. And in the discussion I was in recently, one example of this might be that token and ICO marketplace, which a lot of people are dismissing because yes, it's full of criminals and all these people are going to go to jail and loads of people are going to. Yes, that's all true. But the regulated marketplace that comes out of the other side of that could be vast, because it's a radically more efficient way of transacting in some corporate spaces, because it avoids the traditional clearing and settlement mechanisms. So if we want to do something with technology that marks us out, let's not get sick of all the blockchain stuff. Let's try and think of it in a different context. If we match that up with enhanced KYC, AML, the EVID and so on, so we know who's participating in things, we can construct markets that are much cheaper to run than other markets. And the third area, as Tony alluded to, was AI. And I was saying to Sandy and a couple of other people earlier on, I came along to the AI retreat and I enjoyed it. I felt I learned things from it, and it was very interesting people, and they made me think of new things, which I greatly value. But as time goes by, thinking back on that, it seems to assume more and more importance to me. In other words, the things that I heard at the time at that event, which were just, oh, that's quite interesting, as time goes on, seem more and more fundamental to me. And I think looking back across the year, that event, and I hope you're going to consider turning it into something, an annual thing, which makes Jersey the heart of some of this stuff. Some of the discussions that went on there, which at the time seemed to me to be a little esoteric, because I come from the technological perspective, discussions about, for example, the ethics of artificial intelligence and artificially intelligent regulation and this kind of thing. At the time, I thought they were interesting, but as time goes by, I can see they're really crucial. And they're areas where developing some specific expertise at the interface between the technology and the regulatory structures could be a really important lever looking forward. So the opportunities here, I think actually some of them are quite near term, because if you look at the money that's going in, just to echo Joe's point, so where is the actual money being spent in financial institutions at the moment? It's largely going into machine learning, which you would imagine, obviously, because the machine learning is a very voracious consumer of data, and the financial institutions tend to have lots of data that they don't know what else to do with. And the primary use of the machine learning stuff at the moment is fraud detection and fraud prevention and so on. But these are very early stages. And if you look at what people are going to be spending money on this year, you see a real lot of money going into the sort of chatbots and robo advice kind of thing. And I think a lot of people's revealed preference is already in that direction now. You know, when I go to well, I mean, the truth, I don't really care whether I'm talking to a person or not. I don't know whether I'm. But you know, if I go to the Barclays thing and what do I have to do that? I'd much rather do it through the chat thing than talking to somebody on the phone, because I could get interrupted or sidetracked. And of course, when I hang up the phone, I've forgotten everything they told me anyway. So when you do it in the little chat thing and you can go back to it, oh yeah, I have to type this or whatever, I like that better. And I don't care if it's a robot or a person at the other end of the line, as long as it's doing what I ask them to do. So all of those jobs that went off to Vietnam a few years ago, where you've got 10,000 people in the call centre, well, now you're not going to have 10,000 people in the call centre anymore, because the call centre is going to be a rack of PCs against the wall, and it's not going to be in Vietnam, it can be here. And the reason it can be here is because the value-added jobs aren't the people sitting answering the phones anymore, it's the data analysts that you were talking about earlier on. It's the people who are going to structure those conversations to get the optimum customer service. It's the people who understand how to match the new user experience. And remember, the step between chat channels and voice channels is very small. So once you can convert complex financial services issues into these chat interfaces, so I don't have to run some stupid banking application if I want, I can just do it from Messenger or WhatsApp or something. Once that works, it's a very small step from typing, you know, what's the current value of my co-fund's pension thing. It's a very small step from typing that to just saying it. And saying it is where we're going next. And it's a very practical opportunity for you guys to take a step forward. I want to flag up one particular area of this though. So at the AI retreat, I couldn't resist putting up the John Cryan thing from the Financial Times, because I think it's, you know, so John Cryan, so this is what he said in the Financial Times. He said, we have people behaving like robots. We're discussing the impact of Brexit on Norwegian fishing quotas. Are you sure you've come to the right place? Oh, okay. All right. So he said, right now we have people behaving like robots doing mechanical things, but tomorrow we're going to have robots behaving like people. And that's a very inspiring talk if you work for Deutsche Bank, isn't it? It's like, I hope he cleared that. I'm sure his HR people loved that when that came out in the. But the point is, he's right, you know, and that's going to happen here. So we have to find some other things for those people to do, and there's the higher value-added stuff. But I just want to illustrate a lot of the conversations talk about the banks replacing what they're doing with AI, starting this machine learning stuff, and that's interesting, and you don't focus on that. But if you think a little bit longer term, the customers are going to have AI too, because Google is giving it to them for nothing. You can go and download TensorFlow and start mucking around with it for nothing. Google is giving customers AI as well. And so right now we have a financial services industry where you have some important, valuable, trusted services that you sell to me. I mean, I'm not a high net worth individual, but I like to picture myself in that sort of situation. So if I was a high net worth individual, right, I would certainly buy things because of adverts of horses jumping around on beaches or whatever. I can't remember what there was a spaceship thing. There was an advert for a bank I saw that had a spaceman do it. I can't remember why or what he was doing or why this would encourage me to buy anything. But the point is, that's how you encourage people to buy things, right? So, but good luck selling my AI a pension plan based on some horses jumping around on beaches or whatever. Because your AI is going to have to sell a pension to my AI, not to me. Okay? First of all, dealing with pensions is boring. I know because I was doing it on Monday, right? And by the way, I'm an intelligent person, okay? So I'll take the Pepsi challenge with anybody here in this room. I'm not stupid. I have a degree, a STEM degree, you know. I'm an intelligent person, and I went to the meeting with our pensions guy on Monday, and the guy might as well have been speaking in Mandarin. I had literally no idea what he's talking about. It's to reverse tax, flip, break, and then there's a taper thing here, and if you do this, and if we have something in Madagascar, I don't know what he's talking about. And I'm a clever person. The sooner that an AI sorts out pensions for me, the better. I am far too irresponsible to be allowed to deal with the issue of pensions. So you can imagine a situation where I go to the regulator and I choose the bot that I want to work for me, right? So, Tony might choose the Blake 7 bot that's advertised on the thing, for example. I might choose the Saga bot, right? Because Saga would have a bot that was right. So you've got all this to look forward to. The first time you get that letter from Saga about car insurance, it's heartbreaking. I mean, it's like you just, God damn it, why were they allowed to bring this into my house? And now I quite look forward to them. Oh, that's quite a good deal. I can't wait. So if I wanted a bot working for me, I'd probably choose the Saga bot. But thinking about a world in which it's bots selling things to other bots with bot regulators is a fantastically different environment from what we have now. And it ought to be a fantastically better environment, because it ought to be a much cheaper environment, a much better regulated environment. It should be a much better deal for me, the customer, and it should be more efficient for the financial service providers as well. So this idea of branding intelligence, constructing ways of using bots, I think is well worth the time. So to finish, what's the story? Well, why are we doing these technologies? I think the way we should think about it is jurisdictional competition. We're not doing it because we want to make. Yes, of course, we want to support the startup space and so on. But the underlying thing is we're not trying to make it so that we're coming up with ideas so that a company can do something a bit better, or that a bank can do something a little bit better. What we're trying to construct is a smart jurisdiction whereby the jurisdiction... I mean, who was at Blockchain Week in London this week? You weren't, were you? Because you've got, a job. That's right. Whereas I've got the free time. So I was at London Blockchain Week. I can't even tell you how mental some of the things I saw at London Blockchain Week were. But one of the things I saw was a huge stand from Gibraltar advertising jurisdictional competition. Why don't you come and set these business up in Gibraltar, because the regulator there is going to co-evolve this new regulatory environment with you. I mean, it's rather disloyal, I suppose, but I got some stickers, some Gibraltar stickers from my... Because, they've got a good brand, right? Let it rock and all that stuff. It's cool, So the big picture is I want you to be positive about the new technologies that Digital Jersey is beginning to connect into the real world this year. The initiatives that are already going on are strong and deserve support. But the big picture is about the jurisdiction and making it a better jurisdiction for people to do business. Thanks for listening.